November 17, 2023, noon. The CEO of the most talked-about company on Earth joins a video call he assumes is routine. 4 minutes later, he no longer runs it. By any normal reading, this is over. Boards remove CEOs. CEOs leave. 5 days later, he was back in the building, and almost the entire board that fired him was gone. Here is the part nobody explains. He owned nothing. Not one share. Not then, not now. So what was he actually holding? Sam Altman went to Stanford in 2003 to study computer science. He left after 2 years. Years later, he told the New York Times what he actually learned there, not from lectures, but from playing poker with his classmates. He said it taught him how to notice patterns in people over time, and how to make decisions with very imperfect information. Remember that, imperfect information. His mentor, Paul Graham, described him with a line that followed him for 20 years. Drop Sam on an island of cannibals, come back in 5 years, and he'd be their king. That is not a compliment about intelligence. It is a comment about what happens to whoever is standing next to him. He was 19 when he made his first real bet, 2005. 8 companies get into the very first class of a new accelerator called Y Combinator, and his is one of them. He drops out and builds Looped, an app that shows you where your friends are. The iPhone does not exist yet. He raised over $30 million and signed Sprint and Verizon. On paper, this worked. Almost nobody used it. March 2012. Green Dot buys Looped for $43.4 million, and he takes the money and starts a fund. That's the clean version. Here's the part that matters. According to the Wall Street Journal, senior employees at Looped went to the board twice and asked them to fire him. The words they used were deceptive and chaotic. Some executives said they would leave if he stayed. The board kept him. Count that, too. The third time would be different. 2014. He becomes president of Y Combinator, and this is where he learns the thing the rest of this story runs on. At Y Combinator, he is not buying companies. Y Combinator takes a small stake in exchange for its money. The firm does, not him. What he has instead is the decision about which companies get to exist at all, and the phone number of everyone who funds them. He is not the richest person in the room. He is the person the room is organized around. Hold that. December 2015. OpenAI is founded, not as a company but as a nonprofit. And the reason is the whole engine of this story. At the time, the leading lab building this technology was inside Google. The founders' stated worry was that the most powerful tool ever built would be made by a company whose ultimate obligation was to its shareholders. So they wrote their goal down like this: to advance digital intelligence in the way most likely to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. Read that last part again, because it is going to come back and it is going to hurt. Unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. The launch announcement carried a number, $1 billion in pledged funding, for a research lab with no product, no business, and no commercial revenue. Altman is co-chair. Elon Musk is the other co-chair. Greg Brockman is there. And there is a scientist named Ilya Sutskever. Musk recruited him personally out of Google. He is one of the 3 names behind the neural network breakthrough that started the modern AI era. Of everyone in that room, he is the one whose work the entire enterprise depends on. 8 years later, Ilya Sutskever would vote to fire Sam Altman. The promise ran into a wall almost immediately. Training frontier AI does not cost millions. It costs billions, and then tens of billions. Donations were never going to fund AI at that scale, so in 2019 they build something new. The nonprofit stays on top, holding control, and underneath it sits a for-profit arm that investors can put money into. That's it. That's the whole thing you need. The people putting in the money and the people holding final control were deliberately not the same people. Microsoft starts writing checks. By 2023, it has put in around $13 billion. And Elon Musk never thought the structure would hold. He had standing to say so. He had paid for it. In court, the number became public. $38 million into the nonprofit. In 2018, he proposed taking control of OpenAI to compete head-on with Google. Some reporting says he pushed to fold it into Tesla. Altman declined. Both positions were defensible. Musk's argument was that you cannot beat Google's AI lab as a charity, so stop pretending. Altman's argument was that the entire point was that no single person controls this, and handing it to a single billionaire does not solve that. Musk left the board. In 2023, he started a competitor. Musk left. The argument didn't. November 30, 2022. OpenAI releases ChatGPT. 1 million users in 5 days. 100 million monthly users within 2 months. At the time, the fastest any consumer product had ever reached that number. Not the fastest AI product, the fastest product. In January 2023, Microsoft commits $10 billion more and starts rebuilding its entire product line around technology this company makes. In May, Sam Altman testifies before the United States Senate and asks it to regulate his own industry. Senators thank him for coming. On November 6th, he stands on stage at OpenAI's first developer conference and launches a product that lets anyone build their own version of ChatGPT. That is 11 days before he is fired. By any measure, he is the most powerful person in the industry. And here is the crack. It is not financial. According to former board member Helen Toner, the board was not told ChatGPT was launching. They found out on Twitter. Toner also said Altman had not told the board he personally owned the OpenAI startup fund. Nothing on that list is illegal. Every item is small, but a board's entire function is supervision. And a board that learns about the most important product launch in its industry from social media is not supervising anything. The success created the problem. The bigger it got, the more it mattered who was actually in charge. Here's what almost everyone watching this gets wrong. You have been told for 3 years that this is Sam Altman's company. His salary that year was disclosed, $76,001. His equity, 0. In 2026, on the stand in Oakland, co-founder Greg Brockman confirmed his own stake was worth close to $30 billion. He had paid nothing for it. Sam Altman, 0. A man from the same founding table, $30 billion. So much for unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. But that 0 is not what made him vulnerable. It did not make him safe either. It was beside the point. Remember the structure. The investors held the money, and the nonprofit board sitting on top of them held the final say. Sam Altman held neither. That board hired the chief executive. That board could fire him. And it answered to a mission statement, not to owners. And this is the part where you should stop thinking of the board as idiots. In October 2023, Helen Toner co-authored an academic paper that discussed OpenAI's safety record and compared it unfavorably to a competitor's. Reporting says Altman responded by working to remove her from the board. Read that sequence in order. A director publishes criticism, and the chief executive moves to remove the director. That is not a personality clash. That is the supervised deciding who gets to supervise. 6 people held that power. On a Friday at noon, 4 of them used it. Looped twice. This is 3. Thursday, November 16th. Sam Altman is on stage in San Francisco at the APEC Summit, on a panel with world leaders in the audience. Friday, November 17th. Noon. Sam Altman joins a video call, and Ilya Sutskever tells him the board has voted to remove him. The call lasts about 4 minutes. 20 minutes later, Greg Brockman is told he has been taken off the board. He can stay as president, but he was not in the meeting. Within hours, Mira Murati, the chief technology officer, is named interim CEO. Then the statement goes up. 4 sentences. Altman's departure follows a deliberative review process, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI. No specifics, no examples, no explanation of what not consistently candid means. Years later in court, it came out that the board had not acted on a whim. It had been documenting concerns for roughly a year. According to trial testimony, the file ran to 52 pages. 52 pages of reasons. 4 sentences for the world. That gap turned a firing into a rebellion. Microsoft, $13 billion in, the company's largest investor, was not told in advance. Reporting says Nadella was furious. He found out roughly when the public did. The employees were not told either. Microsoft's stock falls 1.7% before the market closes. That evening, Brockman resigns, and 3 senior researchers walk out with him. Altman posts that he loved his time at OpenAI, that it was transformative, and salutes. Then he posts something else. If he starts going off, he writes, the OpenAI board should go after him for the full value of his shares. He has no shares. That's the joke. It is also the entire problem, said out loud on day 1, and almost nobody noticed. Saturday. The investors start pushing back. Within roughly 48 hours of firing him, the board is reported to be discussing whether to reverse it, and they still have not given a specific reason. Not to Microsoft, not to the staff, and not publicly. Reporters camp outside the building. Employees start posting hearts on X, a company communicating with its own leadership through emoji because the formal channels have stopped working. Altman describes the experience as something like reading your own eulogy while you are still alive. And that same weekend, the board does something the public would not learn about for 2 years. It opens a conversation about handing OpenAI to its biggest rival. Reuters reported it at the time, and court testimony confirmed it years later. The board contacted Anthropic, a company founded by people who had walked out of OpenAI over safety, about merging the 2 companies, with Anthropic's chief executive Dario Amodei running the combined thing. Amodei declined. The merger and the job. Read that again. Within about a day of removing their own chief executive, the people supervising the most valuable AI company in the world were asking a rival to come take it. That is what running out of options looks like. Sunday. He is inside the OpenAI offices again, on a visitor badge. He posts a picture of it. First and last time I ever wear one of these. Negotiations for his return run all day. They collapse. Sunday night, the board names a second interim CEO, Emmett Shear, co-founder of Twitch. Marathi lasted about 2 days. 3 CEOs in one weekend. Altman later told Bloomberg that this was the moment he decided he was actually finished. He called the Shear appointment real deception. Monday. 3 a.m. Pacific Time. Satya Nadella posts that Microsoft has hired Sam Altman and Greg Brockman to lead a new advanced AI research team. Altman replies with 3 words. The mission continues. Later that day, Nadella goes on television and says Microsoft is committed to OpenAI and to Sam, irrespective of what configuration. Read that sentence again. The largest investor in the company just said, it does not particularly matter which building the man works in. Microsoft closes at an all-time high, $377.44. At the day's peak, $54 billion in market value was added. Now read the ledger. The board removed him. The board replaced him twice. His biggest investor hired him inside 72 hours, and the stock market called the whole thing a win. For Microsoft, he is out. The company is not his. It never was. It's over. Monday morning, a letter starts moving inside OpenAI. 500 names, out of roughly 770 employees. It is not a plea. It says the board's actions have made it obvious they are incapable of overseeing OpenAI. It says the signatories may resign and join the newly announced Microsoft subsidiary, and that Microsoft has assured them there are positions for all of them. By the end of that day, the list is 738 names, over 90% of the company. And at 6:15 that same morning, one more thing had gone up. Ilya Sutskever posted publicly that he deeply regretted his participation in the board's actions, that he never intended to harm OpenAI, and that he would do everything he could to reunite the company. His name is on the letter. The man who told Sam Altman he was fired signed the petition demanding he come back. And across the company that day, employees are posting the same 7 words over and over, until it stops being a sentence and becomes a number. OpenAI is nothing without its people. Investors are reported to be discussing whether to sue the board. Executives are refusing to work, and the board is now holding a company where 9 out of 10 people have said, in writing, that they will walk. Not a threat about pay, a threat about the only asset OpenAI has ever had. Altman did not negotiate his way back into his old job. He made his return conditional on the board leaving. Wednesday, November 22nd, he is CEO again. Of the 6 people who had been on the board before the firing, 1 remained. That night, the staff throw a party at the office. Ilya Sutskever does not attend. 6 months later, he leaves the company. So here is the answer, and it comes in 3 parts, because there are 3 different things people mean when they say someone runs a company. Money. The investors had that. Authority. The board had that, and it used it in 4 minutes. And then there is the third thing, the one nobody had written down anywhere. 738 people. The board could remove the chief executive. It could not keep the company without him. He never had to show a single card. He made everyone else show theirs. That was 5 days in November 2023. In March 2026, the company closed a funding round that valued it at $852 billion. Sam Altman still runs it, and he still owns none of it. The paperwork changed. 1 line didn't. Sam Altman's equity, 0. The people who wrote OpenAI's structure in 2015 were trying to answer a question that still hasn't been answered. Who should be allowed to control something this powerful? They wrote a document that put control above money. And then they found out that legal control and actual power are not the same thing. So decide. Was he the man who kept a mission alive when the alternatives were worse, and who 11 years in still owns none of it? Or was he the man who proved that a board can hold every legal power there is and still lose the room? The facts leave room for both readings. The strangest thing about Sam Altman's power was never how much of OpenAI he owned. It was how little. The board proved it could fire him. The next 5 days proved that firing someone and removing their power are not the same thing. Still echoing,